So today we're looking at price-based objections. And again, this could be a smokescreen or it could be a real objection. The way to know that for sure is to isolate it and to tie people down to the process, to the service that they came in for. And this is something that I basically want to relate to my personal experience, as well as I want to play a snippet of this podcast that I keep bringing up. And I want to kick things off by saying that the first thing you want to be mindful of, you and your service providers, is not to sell from your wallet. So whatever you perceive to be the value that you will pay for a service, just don't bring it into the conversation because it's yours and it's subjective. We all have brands and we're willing to spend money on those brands. And your clients, if they see the value in your services, will not object either. I didn't understand this until I started buying $10,000, $15,000 programs for our business. And then I started seeing it everywhere. I didn't get it fully until I realized that even if I couldn't afford it or I wasn't in the position to want to afford it, I could break it down into separate payments or I could do financing. There were so many other instruments. So where there's a will, there's a way. But the more important thing to get here is that objections aren't rejections. They're just signals that the value's not been communicated. So the question here is, do you not see the price? Do you not see the value, or is it just the price? And ultimately, a bedrock of emotional connection will be required as well. Before you hear it from me, let's just hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, because this is really going to resonate with you.
Things. And probably one of your most least favorite things, but it's going to be your favorite thing after this podcast, which is objection handling. I know, buckle up, you guys, you're up for a ride. So I want you to stop losing patience. We're going to talk about the 6 steps to master objection handling. And it's such a critical thing. You guys, we hear it in life. We don't even really know it. So for those of you that, again, are a provider and you feel like sales is just this icky, scary thing, well, you're selling yourself every day, right? Whether you're buying something, a house, you're trying to get your kids into college, you're negotiating, right? There's always objections coming from everywhere. But as it relates to our practices, I know it can feel uncomfortable when your medical providers and then they're telling you, they can't afford it. They need to think about it. They need to check with the spouse. They need to go on other consults. We're going to dive in. Where do you think?
So I guess I wanted to play this particular bit because I wanted to hear it from a very successful ex-Medspa owner who exited and who also trained hundreds, if not probably thousands of Medspas, not just in the US, but worldwide. Just so that if you were maybe low-key thinking, I am doomed to fail or I am cursed or whatever, objections don't just happen to you. Objections are a natural process. They're a natural part of the process. And everything starts with a mindset, okay? Until we're clear about the mindset, until we accept that this is something that needs to be handled in a way that enables and facilitates a decision-making process, everything that sort of follows from this script on how to handle the objections, what questions to ask, what frameworks to use, what to say when they say I need to talk to my spouse, is there downtime, pain, how do we close, etc., etc., etc. It's just not going to connect, because if a part of you resists that you need to do this, then you're simply just not going to really listen or hear anything that sort of follows. So with that being said, I'm going to let Terry basically bring up what this really means, and then we'll discuss the impact of what this could really spell for your conversions.
Objections come from? Where do you think objections come from? Do you think it's because of what you said or what you did not say? Sit with that for a second. So today I'm going to break down, I'm going to show you how to turn objections into opportunities and why you can have record-breaking sales all year, no matter what the economy is doing. So listen to this quote: price is what you pay, value is what you get. And we all know, depending on what kind of car you drive, what kind of hotels you like to look at, what kind of shoes you wear, what kind of purses you drive. We all have brands and we are willing to spend money on those brands. What's the quote, right? You get what you pay for. And that is so true. So price is what you pay and the value is what you get. And I promise you that your clients, if they see the value in you as a person, you as a provider, you as a brand, they will not object. So objections aren't a rejection. There's a great testimonial on my Instagram from one of the VPs of sales of Durham Care, private equity group that I trained in August. And she bought my affirmation cards, which are these phenomenal motivational cards to use with your team.
So I really like this piece. I actually didn't understand this until I heard it maybe the 4th or the 5th time, which is objections aren't rejections, because so many times we get our ego and our emotions wrapped up in whether we get rejected by someone who's not willing to buy, and we take it personally, and we don't realize that actually it's something completely impersonal. It's about value that's not been communicated or not perceived for one reason or another, or there's a lack of emotional connection, there's a lack of rapport, and this is not you. This isn't something that you're responsible. I mean, you're responsible for it, but it's not your fault, okay? And of course, remember, they're not unique to you. So if someone down the road is scaling their Medspa to 7 figures and beyond, then they're handling the same roadblocks, so to speak, in the way of actually pulling the upsell off.
And that's one of the things I wrote in there. Objections aren't rejections. They're signals that the true value of what you're doing or providing or giving them has not been communicated, or an emotional connection has not been uncovered. So what's the reality of objections? First, let's take a second and normalize this. You guys all know, we just talked about it, every practice faces objections. So whether you're brand new or you've been in business for 30 plus years, they're not unique to you. In fact, they should be pretty predictable at this point in time. And so once you've mastered the patterns and you anticipate when they're coming, you could be fully prepared. So tell me if you agree with these objections, and then we can explain a little bit and go a little bit deeper. Price clearly is the number one. Budget. Now, they're two different things. Price is what the price is. The budget is what somebody can afford to spend. Priority, no doesn't mean not right now. Talking to your spouse or your partner, downtime, I need to think about it, pain and discomfort, and then perhaps a lack of trust with your provider.
And now that I read this again, I realize we've heard so many times Medspa owners come in and say, complain low-key that they're getting objections, as if they were almost expecting not to get objections ever. And so this is just unrealistic. You're never going to be in a situation where you're not going to get objections. You want to fully expect them and be prepared to handle them, as opposed to wonder if the marketing is wrong, wonder if something's wrong with the leads or anything like that. Yes, I'll be the first to admit, if the leads are completely unqualified, dead broke, can't afford financing, apply for financing and don't get qualified, don't get anything allowed through Cherry, Care Credit, whatever, then it's a lead problem, 100%. And this is why we actually utilize the ultimate litmus test, is how many people can we get to apply for financing. Now, of course, there are other telltale signs as well that are preceding the piece, which is applying for financing. If they come in reeking of alcohol or drugs, or if I heard a Medspa owner say this to me this week, missing teeth, for example, then of course, it doesn't take a genius to tell that this person is probably in a precarious position, financially speaking. Now, that being said, we do have Medspa partners that we work with who are literally upselling anyone and everyone, including people whose cars are breaking down and falling apart in the car park, in the parking lot just outside the Medspa. And it goes to show that where they really want it, people are going to be willing to pay and to make it work, to make do, right? And so it's good practice, although it's certainly not the aim to get those kinds of people into your clinic. If it does happen, and I'm not saying anything about these really extreme cases, but if it does happen, someone comes in maybe a bit unassuming and you think they're not going to qualify, still try to close them, especially if you're lacking the experience, because it's reps. And those reps are essentially they're a gift. They're an opportunity and a privilege for you and your other service providers to practice your skills and to try to get as many applications for financing as possible. The number of applications for financing correlates directly with the number of upsells, 100%, especially in this economy. So let's wrap this up real quick.
Personal connection. But here's really what you need to know. Conversions increase about 30 to 64% when effective objection handling is used. And that is according to some significant statistics, Cloud Talk, GTM Now. So I want you to think about what that actually means for your bottom line. If you can learn to and if you've taken my sales training and you know that sales is a transfer of emotions by you and me. So mastering the consultations is one of the only ways that you will increase revenue, because we have to master the revenue potential from each person. So if you knew, and I'm going to challenge you guys to actually, when you're listening to this podcast, go figure it out. What is your current conversion rates today? And if they're below 70%, we have an opportunity for growth. So if I'm telling you, or I'm offering you that you could increase your patient conversions 30 to 64% just by handling objection handling, that's massive, you guys. Calculate the amount of money that could be. So what is the root?
This is how you can take $1,000 in ad spend and turn it into anywhere between 5 and 10 new patients who come in, pay $99, $199, and that's the end of it. Barely break even on the ad spend, maybe on the marketing agency's fees as well. And someone who's generating asymmetric returns to that. We have plenty case studies of solo estheticians, injectors, practitioners who came to us, started spending about $30 a day for the first 30 days, generated about 7, 8 new patients, upsold half of them into 1,500, 2,500 packages, and therefore generated a total of 10K return on ad spend. 10K on 1K spend. That's a 10-to-1 ratio. This is how different the outcomes can be. It could be a 1-to-1, 1K produced out of 1K spend, or it could be 10K. And that's going to be on the other side of objections. The magic happens on the other side of the work that you're avoiding. I cannot stress this enough. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this podcast really quickly. I'm just going to show you a quick clip from Hormozi on how to isolate some of these objections.
One of my favorite ways to close someone is to just say whatever thing they said they're struggling with that they're not sure about, you just say, hey, in a hypothetical world where that didn't exist, would you say yes? And whatever it is, if that thing doesn't exist and they say sure, then you literally now have only one thing you need to solve to get the sale, right? So if you're tired of having people give you obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, you just say, hey, if you had the time, would you do it? And if they say yes, then it's like, cool, let's figure out how to get you the time, right? And then you can solve one problem and make the deal. And the same thing is, hey, if your wife were on board, would you do it? Okay, cool. Then what do we need to do to figure out so she wouldn't be worried about it, right? And so whatever the thing is, you just say, hey, in a hypothetical world where that didn't exist, would you do it? Cool. And then you can close the one isolated variable to get the deal done.
So that's actually coming in a very timely fashion as well. We're handling the talk to my spouse objection quite a lot these days, and there's a lot of resistance to using verbiage like, does your spouse know you're here? Do they agree with this? Or would you be opposed to giving them a call right now? To be clear, there's so many ways to handle these objections. But I think the most important thing to do before you dive into that, whether it's the price objection, the money objection, the time delay objection, I need to think about it, or I need to speak to my spouse, is to isolate the objection. Isolate the objection, meaning anything and everything else aside. If this was a non-issue, if money was a non-issue, if your spouse was here and she was aligned, would you go forward with this? And as soon as they say yes, if it's a hell yeah, then you have their permission to try and handle this. Or you can even double check. If you want to stay agreeable and if you want to err on the safe side, you can even go and double down on it, which is perfect. Would you be opposed to exploring ways of making this work with me? So if money was not an issue, then would there be anything else stopping you from going forward with us today? Or okay, fine, let's not think about the money for a second. Would you still be opposed to going forward with this if it could make sense? No, that's it. It's just the money. Okay, and so in that case, do you want us to try and work this out together? Would you be opposed to us trying to work this out together? There's so many ways you can handle these things. You do not need to use my words. You don't need to use Alex Hormozi's words, Terry's words. Don't use anyone's words if they don't feel natural. I'll be the first to admit that if you try and use verbiage that doesn't align with you, that doesn't resonate, you only have two options. Either you resolve the dissonance in your head first, so you reframe the way you think about those things and understand what's giving you resistance. Maybe you have some bad associations. Maybe you had some car salesman once close you that way, and then you had buyer's remorse, and then you'll forever have that etched into your brain as a bad way to handle it. Or maybe you had a door knocker come and shove that objection handler down your throat, or whatever that may be, ended up parting ways with more money than you wished you had. Don't use that language. Don't use it, because it will feel as incongruent. And even if you get away, even if the client closes, converts, you're going to feel, dirty. You're going to feel like it doesn't align with you, and you're going to be way less likely to continue using it. So you have to find your vibe. You have to find your stride. I'm not a very vocal, extroverted salesperson, for example, so I never sell on high energy. I sell on persuasion, and I sell on logic, on unwavering conviction, and just arguments that cannot be disputed, right? Because I know what you want and you know what you want, so let's both what you want, right? But in this particular case, if you want more ways of handling this objection, then just reach out and we'll provide them to you. And we'll look at 10, 20, 30, 50 different ways of saying the same thing, which is fundamentally handling the same objection and the same perspective shift. You can even run it through Claude, ChatGPT, Manus, any AI. Have us run it through it. and basically get that sorted out for you once and for all, because this is one of the 3 biggest objections. This, spouse, think about it. By far the 3 biggest objections. Correct me if I'm wrong. There you have them. And that's a wrap. Hope this is useful, and we'll see you in the next one.